Well, take a look at this. An 11-alarm fire raging at a meat warehouse. This is in New Jersey. Firefighters having a very tough time putting out the blaze. Why? Solar panels. First responders had trouble accessing the roof and were worried about getting shocked from the panels. And Sabrina, you say there's another reason why taxpayers should not be paying for the green agenda, right?
That's right. I mean, there's nothing inherently wrong with the green agenda, as long as the market is determining a need for it rather than government sort of pushing taxpayers to support unproven or premature technology. One of the problems that we've seen with examples like this fire is that a lot of times there are unintended consequences of these kind of projects. I think of the fuel efficiency standards, which has led to the car industry creating lighter cars to meet these new standards. Many times these cars are much more dangerous than regular cars. So a lot of times there's unintended consequences that the government has not considered.
That's a big unintended consequence. And Morgan, the government since 2009 has spent $20 billion on various solar projects. Isn't that too much?
I think we need to be spending on solar projects if we want to compete with China, for example, on the world stage in this arena. Then yes, we need to be spending on solar. I think this isn't indicative of green money, green wasteful money. I think this is much more indicative of the fact that when you have a new technology come in, it is going to have blowback, whatever that technology is. This is indicative that people in New Jersey and around the country need to sit down and figure out fire codes and new building regulations. And actually, we're seeing this in other areas too, Europe, England.
Actually, you know, the interesting thing is, EMAC, we have known about the dangers for firefighters of solar panels for a while. It was 2011, 2 years ago, Underwriters Laboratory had this big study saying solar panels cannot be easily de-energized. That is, there's no big circuit switch that you can pull down because each panel is an energy source in and of itself. So they are inherently a fire trap, no?
Yeah, that's right, David. They are inherently a fire trap. We're talking about an out-of-control chemical fire, basically because of the batteries there. The firefighters face electric shock because it's really hard to put out the energy.
You come from a firefighter family, by the way, you know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And it's really hard to cut ventilation holes through the solar panels to, you know, basically get the fire out. And we're talking about structural collapse. These are massive 300 square feet projects that is really a challenge for firefighters. The problem here is quality, too. We have really bad, defective solar panels up on these roofs. New York Times even reported up to a fifth of them have defects, these solar panels. So watch out. Some of these panels coming in from China could be really defective
Rick,
as well.
It makes you wonder that if we were in a free market world where the government wasn't picking winners and losers, whether they'd be picking this at all.
Guys, come on. I mean, I have to say this. This is one of the great stretches we've ever had. This is like saying when we put electricity into homes all those years ago, you know what? It created more danger for fire and firemen. When we started
But
drilling,
that was the free market that did that. We have $20 billion of our tax dollars since 2009 going into technology that ain't working pretty well.
You are arguing that because there are some fire issues here that's the problem.
They're huge.
That's not the only problem. Solyndra. One word, Solyndra.
Yeah. Let's stick with the actual issue that you put on the table.
These are the facts.
The National Fire Protection Association has not suggested getting rid of solar. You know what they've suggested? They want to mount warnings on the walls of buildings that have solar panels, and
you put that finger back in your hole.
I'm going to finish this, thank you. And they want to train firemen to deal with this.
Okay, well,
Mike,
the fact is that all the nanny state rules and regulations seem to go out the window when it's a government-supported program, right?
Absolutely, David. I think, you know, when the government gets involved in basic research, I think that's fine. That's generally a good thing. But the government shouldn't be involved beyond that when it gets to marketing and innovation and actually dictating where people and companies have to spend money to buy products. I think that's where we get into trouble.
And Mike, isn't it something, though, that the government has a stake? When the government has a $20 billion stake in something, they're willing to let other rules and regulations go by the wayside, aren't they?
There's a huge conflict of interest.
Go ahead, John Tamney.
Well, you know, I'm going to even disagree with Mike. The government should not be a venture capitalist ever. The simple truth, if you have a clue about how to invest, you don't work in government, you make money in the private sector. And it goes back to your earlier point. Whom do you trust to allocate capital? Paul Tudor Jones, John Paulson, and Warren Buffett, or John Boehner, Harry Reid, and Barack Obama? I mean, I think the question answers itself. When they invest even a dollar, they waste our money.
Real quick, Morgan, real quick.
I think EMAC hit the nail on the head. Defective solar panels from China. We need to create our own because this is a technology that is going to continue to move forward. And just for the record, less than 1% of the 1,300 projects funded by the Energy Department have gone bankrupt.
By the way, that warehouse,
Not waiting.
30% of the money for those solar panels came from taxpayers. So the blitz is on to sell the health care law. The government buying ad time to promote the law in NFL games. But is this ad blitz a waste of tax dollars? That's at the bottom of the hour in Cash In. But first, right here, nearly half of employers say workers in their 20s have a poor work ethic. But some of the Forbes crew say bosses have this wrong. That's a flip side coming next.
I generally come in at least 15 minutes late. I use the side door. That way Lumberg can't see me. And after that, I just sort of space out for about an hour.
So do young folks have a poor work ethic? Nearly half of all bosses say Generation Y workers don't get it. But on the flip side, John, you say that's a bad and unfair rap. Explain.
Oh, this is nonsense, and it's historically ignorant. I'm from Generation X, and they said about my generation in the early 90s that we were goatee-rubbing slackers who would never get beyond folding shirts at the Gap and living with our parents whose achievements we would never outdo. But within a few years and good government policies from both sides where they got out of the way, Generation X became the richest generation in the history of the richest nation on earth. Generation Y is not ambitious. It simply has too many barriers put in its way. When those are removed, it will soar.
Okay, so Sabrina, getting back to a past segment, if we have the right policies, Generation Y will be working as hard as anybody.
I'm not so concerned about the policy so much as technology. I think that a lot of young people don't realize, how good they have it. The fact is, if you want to be a writer today, set up a blog. If you want to be a journalist, get a camera and a computer, and you can have thousands and thousands of viewers. The fact is, there's a sense that if you went to a good college and had a good GPA, that all of this should just be handed to you, and people seem to have forgotten that no one really cares about your transcript. Get to work and show us how good you are.
So, EMAC, a little bit of the entitlement mentality in Generation Y?
No.
No?
And by the way, is John Tamny really a Gen X? I think he's a boomer. Newsflash.
Wow.
Newsflash, I'm a boomer. Newsflash, I'm a boomer.
I am the boomer of all boomers.
Uncle Cranky Pants baby boomer. You know what? Stop it. Every generation has made complaints about the generation coming behind them.
That's true.
And I'll tell you something. They're great with technology, creative, multitasking, and they just want a little bit more freedom. They're not as hierarchical.
All right. I think we've got a genuine Generation Y right here with Morgan. What do you think, Morgan?
I think we're getting an unfair rap. I agree. It's generational gibberish. And let's not forget the baby boomers were the hippie generation as well. There was a lot to be said there. But actually, if you look at my millennial group, we have one of the highest unemployment rates. We are the only group, according to the Labor Department, that has seen the average income drop from 2000 to 2013. I think there's a lot going on here, and it's not entitlement.
Real quick, Rick, what do you think?
This is old geezer talk. When I was a boy, I used to walk 14 miles to school in the snow without shoes on glass. It's silly. These kids work hard.
All right.
On
Coming
glass.
up, the stocks our informers say will pay you even if the market